So the 9/11 thing, where do we start with this?
Well, first of all, let's start with the fact that why our president would stonewall any investigation for 2 years. Mm-hmm. Why would you do that? I was an elected official. If something like that would have happened on my watch, I would welcome the investigation immediately so that we could learn from it and hopefully be able to stop it from ever happening again. Now, what they want us to believe and what they've sold us is that 19 Islamic radical terrorists came to this country armed with box cutters, and they defeated our multi-billion-dollar air defense system, all while taking orders from a bearded guy in a cave in Afghanistan.
Now that's
when you phrase it like
oversimplified version.
What
I'll tell you what,
that oversimplified? That's what they told us happened.
That is what happened.
What about the path of least resistance? What about looking at this as an objective person and saying there were extremists that despise us as a country? Whether their reasons are valid or not, I'm not even getting into that.
Right.
But they despise us as a country. They came up with a great plan and kicked our ass.
Yes, they defeated our multi-billion-dollar air defense system.
They did.
Unfortunately, okay, time out now. Now I'm going to ask this question.
Okay.
In my line of work in the Navy and the SEALs, you're not given the opportunity to fail, right? Mm-hmm. All right. 9/11, 4,000 people died that day. If you recall a few months ago, do you remember when they moved those nuclear warheads from North Dakota down to like Louisiana, whatever it was, and they violated a bunch of security stuff? Well, I read 2 weeks later, 70 people lost their jobs over that. Now, with this huge, massive failure of our air defense system, why was no one fired?
Because the people who allowed it to happen, unfortunately, were the captains who opened the door and got their throats cut. Did they really violate the air defense system?
But they were time.
No, you can't. No. They were commercial airliners.
Wait.
How did they violate the air defense system?
Simple. Because you remember when Payne Stewart died, the golfer?
Yes.
He took off from Florida in a private jet, not even a public one, a private jet. They lost contact with him. Within 20 minutes, they had a fighter jet up on the wing. The fighter pilot looked inside, saw them all slumped over, couldn't raise them, and said, I believe they're all dead, stayed with them till they went up into Dakota or whatever. Had they going to hit Omaha, he'd have blasted them out of the air, but they didn't. They went down in a field. Here's the failure. You had 4 commercial airliners all hijacked an hour apart, and not one of our jets ever made it up into the air. What? Not one jet got up there. That is a massive failure, and you can try to out-yell me and do all that you want. There is your failure.
It's not out-yelling you, but you ask a question. You throw a question out, and I try to answer it, or at least speculate, and then you go, oh, okay, time, and you just barrel over it. It's like, that's not right. We can all just ask questions that don't have an answer to them. I don't know why nobody was fired. But because I don't know who was fired or why they weren't fired, that does not mean that the government set up 9/11, and I didn't see what I thought I saw. The air traffic controllers couldn't believe the flight pattern. They didn't know exactly what was happening. No one said, this is a hijacked plane, this is what we want. So all they did was they lost communication with pilots. They saw them flying erratically, and all of a sudden one hits a building, and then X amount of minutes later, the other one hits the building.
An hour later.
Okay, whatever. But what is that, an hour later? So what does that mean?
That means that somebody had people standing down.
Because that's JFK, Oliver Stone terminology. And I'm saying stand down. So the government called the military.
Have you been in the military?
No. But I'm
asking you. Have you been in the military?
And I'm telling you no.
Okay, then you don't know.
But I know stand down is a real term. But I'm saying that was from the movie JFK. Someone said stand down. So do you really think someone called and said stand down? You can't keep a secret between 10 people. But all of a sudden, this massive thing that killed 4,000 citizens, everyone's willing to keep quiet about it.
No. I'll counter that with you by saying, what was Adolf Hitler's greatest quote? The bigger the lie, the easier the sale.
That's great, but that is not relevant to this.
Oh, it isn't.
No, it's not.
So if this isn't a lie...
You couldn't keep tail. What was the one with the sexual scale? Nothing is kept quiet. Adolf Hitler didn't have the internet working against him. Adolf Hitler didn't have digital cameras. You couldn't keep Abu Ghraib quiet. Abu Ghraib brought down the whole thing because of the digital camera was sent over the internet. The times are different. The information is transferred differently than it was back then with Hitler. That's not an accurate thing.
It would be very
difficult
to keep something this magnitude quiet.
I remember back when I was a young
by younger women here.
when I was a young teenager, and they told me Lyndon Johnson got on television and said our boys are floating in the water. I remember when they told us about the Gulf of Tonkin incident, where they told us that North Vietnam had fired upon 2 of our ships, and that was the declaration of war that got us into the Vietnam War. Now, a couple years ago, I was teaching at Harvard, and McNamara, who was, I believe, Secretary of State or one of them at that time, he's now going around with the new film, The Fog of War, and he's admitted the Gulf of Tonkin incident never happened. Now, 58,000 of my generation were killed in Vietnam over an incident that was made up. It never happened.
Common sense, if they were going to do this, I mean, why not consider it? Why would you go through all of the possible things that could go wrong? If you can get people out of their offices and do all this and plant these, why wouldn't you just go through the basement and do it properly and kill a tremendous amount more people? And then it's just a little bit easier. Why go through all of the nonsense and the voice mechanisms that cover people calling their relatives and all of the possible ways for a snafu to occur, as opposed to 2 massively loaded, properly wired trucks in each basement? You take one building down, you take the other building down, they fall completely into New York City, you kill a lot more people, and there's no planes to deal with. There's no air defense to deal with. I mean, as a common sense guy, and if you're that, by the way, if the government is that effective at doing all this stuff, how could they not? They left Colin Powell swinging in the wind, looking like a moron, saying there's uranium. I mean, how would they allow such an obvious one to go?
I don't know. All I can say is that, and I have no background that you guys have, certainly, as a Navy SEAL.
No, it's not about that. That's not about it.
Wait a minute.
No,
He
let
is
me
a
finish.
SEAL.
I'm not saying that.
Let me finish. Do you remember Iran-Contra?
No, I was too busy just being a dummy who ran around not knowing anything about the military. What is that? Was that a good thing? Did our government do good?
That actually is
No.
Contra.
Well,
I know, is that a
true.
guy's name? Is he a movie star? You point the other. I'm not
All right,
SEAL. I know
I'm not
that.
talking to you. You know
Why?
Iran-Contra?
Yes.
All right.
No, he doesn't.
You're telling me that everybody knows, right? Well, I had a good friend of mine that I served with in the SEAL team who came back as an officer. He ended up on SEAL Team 6 with Dick Marcinko, the anti-terrorist SEAL unit, right? He was sitting at home watching television when Iran-Contra broke, and he perked up and said, wow, I was part of that. See, everything is compartmentalized in the government. A doesn't know what B's always doing because you're given an order. And you're given an order, okay, you're going to take this from point A to point B. That's all you know.
You know what?
You don't know the big picture.
Okay.
You're just operational, at operational level, doing things that you're made to do.
Let me tell you the big difference, though. And
Well, I'm sure you will.
Your military experience does come into play when you're talking about things like the Gulf of Tonkin. Yes, and Iran-Contra. Absolutely. I'll agree with that. But those 2 incidents also were completely military. Completely military, which, if you ask me, it's a lot easier to deal with and keep quiet than airliners that are full of civilians. You got to bring in terrorists.
Who would admit to it? It's mass murder. Someone's going to admit to being
Somebody
part
would
of
talk
mass
about
murder.
it. And you're right about so many things about the government being dirty, but all of that doesn't explain how this
You're right.
government...
You've convinced me. It's everything that the government told me. No, I'm agreeing with you. It's everything they've told us. I shouldn't even ask a question.
No one's saying. Why
because
are you
after
saying
all,
no one's saying you ask a question? No
I'm
one is
agreeing
saying
with
it.
you. Why are you fighting with me?
No,
You've
you're
convinced
not.
I sense
me.
a little sarcasm.
You've convinced me.
All right, good. I
You've
like that.
convinced
We're
me
good at sarcasm.
that my government would never lie to me.
See?
My government
Oh,
is.
now
is,
you're being silly.
No,
Jess.
I'm not.
Yes, you're being a goose.
My country, right or wrong.
Absolutely. It
You know what?
certainly is.
You know
And they
what?
did
Wait
the
a
voice
minute.
tracking. No,
Wait a minute. You
wait
know
a
what
minute.
you guys need to listen
but I
to?
waited.
Okay. Who said the quote, dissension is the greatest form of patriotism?
Bush in the planning room when he was going, and you do the voice tracking that makes their own families think it's them.
Yeah, I'm that
Am I wrong?
stupid.
No, me too, because I think the government's always right. They never
I'll
lie.
ask you the legitimate question.
I have an
Who
answer
made
to
the
you
quote?
too, and you keep telling me I'm not a Navy SEAL.
I
I don't
don't know
know,
the quote.
obviously, or I would tell you. I would love to be able to just shut you down with a brilliant answer, but I don't know. Who said that quote? I don't
Jesse
know.
Ventura.
Doesn't matter. You tell. You're fine.
I don't know who said the quote. I'm admitting it. You've convinced me. I don't know who said the
Jesse,
quote.
why are you getting so frustrated?
I'm not. I don't get frustrated. You'll learn something about us that my unit. We don't get mad. We get even.
Jesus Christ, we're all getting our throats slit tonight.
And always remember, you have to sleep sometime.
Oh, Jesus.
Especially you.
Why?
You
Why?
can't.
I mean, it's like, why is it that when you're asking questions that are speculative and I ask a question, you get angry? Why are you getting angry?
Why are you moving the microphone?
Not angry. I'm listening.
Well,
No, you just moved the microphone.
Because I have nothing to say. I'm listening.
He's convinced.
I'm convinced. You've convinced me.
I don't think I've convinced you, but
Yes,
I do think there are some valid points that you're thinking of. I'm sure you're not convinced.
No, you've convinced
But
me.
no one is saying the government's always honest. No one
Yes,
is
they
saying
are.
that.
My country, right or wrong.
No, not black and white here. We're not
know
talking.
that. No
There's a
one's
gray area, but I think you're way over to one side of this gray area now, and we're on the other side. I think the Cuban problem also is the fact that they're just holding a grudge against Fidel. I think there's an actual grudge that this guy was the last communist holdout.
I can't believe our country would do that. Not our country.
Absolutely
not
not.
us. We would never hold the grudge.
No, sir, we're perfect. We don't ever tell lies. Apple pie and baseball, ladies and germs. 'Cause that's what I believe.
That's right.
That's what I believe. It's all juggling and smiles and mom picks you on the cheeks. I don't think they ever did nothing wrong.
I
No,
agree.
sirree, Bob.
I agree with you.
They're terrific.
He's won me over, man.
Hey,
With his common sense and his knowledge of everything. And,
hey, you
know,
won
and
me
I-
over
and-
too. I mean, look,
and
something
I-
happened in 1960, and that's exactly the same thing that happened in 2001. I mean, I can agree with that.
Well, remember, history repeats itself quite often if you
Absolutely.
ever tried reading.
No, I don't read at
Whoa!
all. I don't read. I don't read. I
Well,
just,
then you'd know
I
that-
watch TV,
there you
and
go.
they
And-
tell me what's going on,
that-
and I go, well, that's that.
There you go.
That's what I do.
There you
Oh
go.
my God!
I don't write neither. I got a crayon.
Can I ask you something?
Sure can.
How many books did you read last winter?
Not many. I was writing one.
Oh,
face!
You really need to understand, too, guys, that I'm not very patriotic. My mother was a World War II vet. My father was a World War II vet. And my brother and I are Vietnam vets, but we're not a patriotic.
I think blind patriotism is one of the most dangerous things ever. Absolutely. And I don't agree or believe everything the government throws out at us. But there are certain things that I think can be looked at with common sense and using your own head. And that's where I stand on the whole thing.
Oh, he's done. He's
I-
convinced you. Good night, Jesse.
I'm turned. Yeah.
It's morning.
Okay. Oh, he got me. I said good night. He was right. It was morning. He would love to bash my fat little face in. Alpha males hate me.
I wouldn't waste my time.
I know you wouldn't.
And you can go officially on the air now and say you've convinced me completely.
You said it. That's all
All
I
right.
need to hear. With
That's
that, I
what I
convinced
said.
you.
That's
Attaboy.
cool.